This new relief would actually be deposited and sent to low-income households. President Biden said today that he wants to decide soon whether to support a temporary pause in the federal gasoline tax and is nearing a decision on student loan relief as he looks to ease the burden of high prices on Americans. And when asked whether he was considering backing a gas tax holiday, Joe Biden told reporters, "I hope I have a decision based on the data. I'm looking for that by the end of the week." Now, such a pause in the 18.3% per gallon federal tax would require Congress to act, and there has been little traction among lawmakers on the idea so far. The Biden administration is eager to find areas of relief for American consumers contending with skyrocketing gas prices as the summer begins. Biden also made clear that he is also weighing whether to back sending Americans gas rebate cards, and Biden stated that's part of the whole operation. Now, the array of options currently up for discussion at the White House reflects the urgency behind the scenes to come up with ways to alleviate soaring costs for Americans. The president has implored his team to search for areas where he has to take action to reduce financial burdens as the price of gas and food soars. The White House has previously downplayed the prospect of sending gas rebate cards directly to Americans because the program will be difficult to administer. High prices and the prospect of a recession are looming over Biden's presidency, threatening Democrats' political prospects in November's midterm elections. And Biden has also downplayed the risk of a recession as the Federal Reserve raises interest rates in an attempt to tame inflation. Lawmakers and governors have floated the notion of a gas tax holiday, encouraging Biden to get behind the idea. The U.S. Treasury and Energy Secretaries each said it is a worthy option. The administration's approach to supporting a suspension of the federal gas tax reflects concerns among some Democrats that it may not provide some significant relief, particularly if retailers raise the base price per gallon. Now, as it happens, Biden told reporters today that he'd speak to Larry Summers, a former Treasury Secretary, who has criticized the administration for its approach to inflation and has warned a recession is now inevitable.
Down from the average pace seen earlier in the year, but still robust. Improvements in labor market conditions have been widespread, including for workers at the lower end of the wage distribution, as well as for African Americans and Hispanics. A box in the June Monetary Policy Report discusses developments in employment and earnings across all major demographic groups. Labor demand is very strong, while labor supply remains subdued, with the labor force participation rate little changed since January. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation poses significant hardship, especially on those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we're strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. Against the backdrop of the rapidly evolving economic environment, our policy has been adapting, and it will continue to do so. With inflation well above our longer-run goal of 2% and an extremely tight labor market, we raised the target range for the federal funds rate at each of our past 3 meetings, resulting in a 1.5 percentage point increase in the target range so far this year. The committee reiterated that it anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range will be appropriate. In May, we announced plans for reducing the size of our balance sheet, and shortly thereafter began the process of significantly reducing our securities holdings. Financial conditions have been tightening since last fall and have now tightened significantly, reflecting both policy actions that we have already taken, as well as anticipated actions. Over coming months, we'll be looking for compelling evidence that inflation is moving.
A new round of stimulus could be on the way for many Americans, everybody. Now, this new bill could guarantee low-income households with monthly stimulus payments. As long as they qualify, eligible people could receive up to $1,200 in extra relief. Now, this is awesome news. And according to the Washington Post, Democratic and Republican lawmakers have held early discussions about a new round of crisis relief stimulus spending. A bill for a guaranteed income program proposed by progressive Democrats in Congress is calling for ongoing $1,200 monthly stimulus checks for adults plus $600 for each child in the household. The program, called the Support Act, which was introduced in the U.S. by Minnesota Democratic Representatives Ilhan Omar and co-sponsored by Representatives Pramila Jayapal and Cori Bush. Omar said in a news release about this bill, "For too long we have prioritized endless growth while millions of people are homeless, hungry, or without health care. The crisis has laid bare these inequalities, and we have the ability to make sure everyone has their needs met." The legislation would set up a $2.5 billion grant fund that would pay for the pilot program. It would pay $1,200 monthly for adults and $600 monthly for each child in the home. Different communities would be involved in the pilot program for the first 5 years, and then the program would become available to everybody who qualifies. According to the proposed legislation, single filing adults with AGI's income of up to $75,000 and jointly filing adults with incomes of up to $150,000, and those filing as head of household with an income of up to $112,000 would be eligible for the maximum amount monthly. Now, a family of 4 or 2 children being younger than age 18 and a yearly income under $150,000 would be eligible for $3,600 a month. Now, the U.S. job market remained tight last month as employers struggled to find people to hire. The Labor Department said that the United States businesses added 390,000 jobs in May as the unemployment rate held steady at 3.6%. Job gains for March and April were revised, down by a total of 22,000 jobs. The demand for labor has also left employers hoping that older workers who left the workforce early in the crisis will come out of retirement, especially after the recent drop in the stock market put a dent in the 401ks. The number of workers ages 55 and older grew last month by 181,000. The labor force also grew by 330,000 workers last month, not keeping up the pace with hiring. In order to attract scarce workers, employers have been offering more flexible schedules, hourly benefits, and higher wages. Average hourly wages in May were 5.2% higher than a year ago, a slight moderation from the month before. But even those bigger paychecks are not keeping pace with rising prices. The Fed is concerned that rising wages could fuel stubbornly high inflation. At 8.3% in May, inflation is already near a 4-decade high, and the central bank has begun raising interest rates aggressively in an effort to regain control over prices. The Fed has raised the rates by half percentage point in early May, and 2 more similar-sized rate hikes are expected in June and July. The former Treasury Secretary is skeptical the Fed can curb inflation without causing a recession and the higher unemployment that comes with it. He said during an interview this week, "I don't think that there's a durable reduction in inflation without a meaningful reduction in wage growth."
Let me start just by making certain that I tell you something that I think I need to say on behalf of Kansans. I've never seen the level of anxiety, uncertainty, concern for the future as I see today when I have conversations with folks in my neighborhood and across Kansas. There's a sense that something's not right. Inflation is a significant component of that feeling, and the inability to know what's around the corner is terribly damaging to folks, both financially but also mentally or psychologically. There's a real circumstance out there that I want you as the chairman and your colleagues to know exists. It is, I think, uncertainty and what the future holds is one of the most damaging things when people try to figure out their lives and how comfortable they are. I also want to highlight a particular Kansas, but middle America, across the country, issue of agriculture. I was on a farm on Saturday, participating in, observing harvest of wheat. We live in a world in which people are starving, and more are going to starve if we are unable to, if we fail to get more grain into markets from Ukraine and from Russia, but from the United States as well.